Hello there and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a role that so many of us fall into without even realizing it has a name. We're talking about being the family peacekeeper. The one who learns to put everyone else's comfort first. And that role, it turns out, has a way bigger impact on your adult life than you'd ever think. Just think about that for a second. If you've ever felt that heavy silence or that unspoken friction in the air, you probably just told yourself you're being overly sensitive. But here's the thing, that feeling is so much more than just a vibe. It's actually a highly developed survival skill that you mastered a long time ago. So to really get how this skill is shaping your life today, we have to rewind. We have to go back to where it all started, to a childhood where your main job, whether you knew it or not, was managing the emotional temperature of the room. And there's actually a psychological term for this whole experience. It's called emotional parentification. This is what happens when a child, really out of necessity, becomes the emotional manager of their own home. You basically end up parenting your parents, learning how to soothe their anxieties, mediate their fights, all while your own needs get pushed onto the back burner. You were probably praised for being so mature for your age, right? The easy kid. You figured out that solving problems wasn't just helpful, it was absolutely essential to stop things from blowing up. So you got really good at suppressing your own feelings, and you started to believe this deep down. My value, and even my safety, depends on how calm I can keep everybody else. So how does that childhood role carry over? Well, in adulthood, that survival skill often turns into this constant state of high alert. It's a kind of hyper-awareness that can feel like a superpower, but man, it can also be a really heavy burden to carry. This right here, this is the inner world of the peacekeeper. For everyone else at the table, it's just a normal dinner. But you feel everything. Your brain, after years and years of training, picks up on all the tiny signals other people miss. That slight change in someone's tone of voice, the pause that lasts just a second too long. You can feel a fight brewing before anyone has even raised their voice. And it's so important to reframe this for yourself. This isn't just you being anxious for no reason. Psychology actually calls it active observation. Your brain is an absolute expert at threat detection. It learned a long time ago that big, messy conflicts often start with the smallest, quietest signs, so it stays on guard to keep you safe. So, if your brain is always on high alert, what does that do to your closest relationships? Well, it often leads to a pattern that is just incredibly draining. It's the burden of overgiving. This cycle is such a classic trap for anyone who grew up as a peacekeeper. It all starts with you feeling responsible for your partner's happiness. So you pour all your energy into the relationship way more than you ever get back. And you start pushing your own needs aside because they feel inconvenient, or even worse, like they're a burden. And the final stop on this train? It's always emotional burnout and a quiet resentment that just starts to build and build. But why do we do this to ourselves? So often it comes from this really deep-seated fear. See, when your job as a kid was to be useful to keep the peace, you learned that your place in the family felt, well, conditional. As an adult, that feeling can morph into a fear of being quietly swapped. This idea that if you aren't perfectly easygoing and accommodating, you'll just be replaced. And this really gets to the core of how this role messes with your self-worth. You might actually hear yourself say, "I'm sorry," right before asking for help, or feel this wave of guilt just for having needs in the first place. And it all goes back to being trained to believe your job was to serve, not to receive. This state of constant alert also explains another huge struggle for the adult peacekeeper, the very real inability to just rest, even when everything is completely fine. Let's look at the brain science for a second. Your brain probably spends most of its day in what's called a beta state. That's high frequency, high alert mode. It's constantly scanning for the next problem. So to you, a quiet house doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like the calm before the storm. Real rest, that happens in an alpha state. But your nervous system has learned that letting its guard down is just plain dangerous. Okay, we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present, now let's get to the most important part of this whole journey, the future. It's all about taking these insights and learning how to reclaim your own inner peace. I really want you to let this one sink in. You are not broken. You are not flawed. Your nervous system is a master of adaptation. It did exactly what it had to do for you to survive in a high-pressure environment. It built you to be incredibly resilient.
So healing isn't about trying to get rid of these incredible skills of observation and empathy. No way. It's about learning how to install an off switch. It's about getting to choose when to use those skills and when to let yourself finally rest. So let's look at two simple, really powerful exercises you can start using to teach your nervous system that it's finally safe to power down.
First up is box breathing. It's so simple, but it's remarkably effective. All you do is inhale slowly for 4 seconds, then hold your breath for 4, exhale slowly for 4, and then hold at the bottom for another 4. That steady rhythm sends a direct, calming signal to your brain that you're safe, helping it shift out of that high alert beta state. The second exercise is the 5-4-3-2-1 method. This one is amazing because it pulls you out of your head where all that threat scanning is happening and grounds you right here in the present moment. You just look around and name 5 things you can see, then 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It's a powerful way to interrupt an overactive mind. When you think about it, your entire system was wired to prioritize responsibility over your own feeling of safety. The heart of healing really is rewriting that code. It's about internalizing this new message deep down in your bones that you are not just allowed to rest, you need to rest, and you absolutely deserve to. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. After years and years of putting everybody else first, what is one small need, just for you, that you will meet for yourself today? It doesn't have to be anything big, but it's the very first step in a brand new direction.